Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. Has someone suggested mediation to you? Are you wondering whether you're going to be going to a mediation? Or are you just wondering what the next step in your divorce might be? Well, this episode is going to be for anybody who is facing mediation or hasn't learnt about mediation yet, because it is a big word in the divorce world. Welcome, Mum.
It is. Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Now, just before we start, it's important to note that mediation is also called conciliation conferences, family dispute resolution.
Yes.
Are there any other names?
No, not really. It's a conference. Sometimes it's a child inclusive conference, it's called. Sometimes it's yes. So if you hear the word conference or if you hear the word mediation in the courts, in the family court system, it's probably the same thing,
right,
under a different guise. But this will apply, I guess, to everything.
And mediation can occur even if you aren't in the court system at all. Is that
That's
correct?
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're listening and you're already in the court system but you haven't done mediation, you can still listen to this episode. And if you like right at the beginning, you just listen to the episode we did last week and you're still going, oh my goodness, I've got so many questions. This is something that you need to know about and actively have in the back of your head as an option that you may be facing. And Mum, how likely is it for anybody going through a de facto separation or a divorce to face mediation? How likely is it?
Very likely. I think unless you walk out of your relationship already having sorted out your property, mediation is going to pop up as a suggestion probably in the very first letter from your ex or the very first time you talk to someone about it, because there's a huge emphasis on mediation.
Okay.
And it's great.
Now, I'm not going to be smart here at all, but mediation does sound like meditation. Is there any Latin reason or anything like that behind it?
Hey.
You're always bringing up Latin words. So why is it called mediation?
Well, medium as in between.
Oh.
Meditation. I don't know how meditation gets in between. Maybe it's in between states, but yes. So basically mediation is where two people with different points of view sit down to resolve a dispute with the help of a mediator, who is the person in the middle, or as I like to call them, the referee.
Right. Okay. So you're saying it's pretty likely people will end up in mediation if they can't agree themselves and get consent orders and move on with.
Yep. It'll either be before the very first letter you get from the other side will probably suggest mediation, or your lawyer will suggest if you've got one. And if you manage somehow to get into the court system without having been to mediation, well, the first time you go to court, they're probably going to send you off to mediation.
Now, I want to ask this question because I know we've had some people that you've spoken to in our course.
Yes.
You've had, their calls for our members. Yes. And one poor lady had just found out her ex had split.
Yes.
And then a week later they were trying to get mediation.
I think the separation was Saturday and railroaded into mediation by Thursday.
So what do you say to those people who we're like, hey, expect mediation, but what about the timing?
Okay, well, put the brakes on, I think, a little bit, because especially if you're in shock, that early, like few days, you haven't had time to even consider your position. What mediation is not about getting back together again.
Yeah.
So you need to think, okay, this is like going into a business deal, and 4 days is not enough time to prepare or consider your position at all.
Okay.
Even on kids.
So can you say your ex goes, surprise, I've got another life, I've got another wife,
yes.
I've got other children, I want a mediation, I want our property sorted, and I've booked us a mediation for next week. Like, how do you say to the mediator when they ring you to get you to come along, I need some more time?
Yep. I think that sounds right.
Okay.
Yep. And I think it's important to be very clear that you're not against mediation.
Right.
Because if you're against mediation, then the other person might go straight to court. You say, I'm really keen to have mediation, but I need more time. I need more time to get some advice, collate my evidence, or I'm too emotionally distraught. Can you give me another month or 3 weeks or whatever? Mediation before court is very much in your control. You probably have to go, but you should go, but you can manage the timing.
All
And
right.
it's got to be fair. And the prospects of success are better if both people are ready. Yeah.
We're going to talk about the readiness that people
Okay.
need to do later. But when it comes to that timing, so you go, no, I need some more time maybe. What about, are you allowed to say, no, I don't want to go to mediation if it's outside of the court?
Yeah, you can. But yeah, have good reasons to not go.
And what's the repercussions of that?
Well, if it's about children and you decline mediation.
So let's talk about, they want to go to mediation to decide who goes when the kids go to
here
dad
and there.
and mums, or
Yes.
mums and mums, or dads and dads. Yeah.
Yes.
So that kind of mediation.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you say, no, I don't want to go.
Yes. Well, then the other party may go to court and they get a certificate from the mediator saying that you won't, you won't negotiate.
Right.
So I've issued this certificate, and that's like the golden ticket, the 60I certificate, Section 60 certificate. And once your ex has that, they can go to court without any further attempts at mediation. So I don't think you should say no to mediation. This is like legal education,
This is
really
education,
only.
not advice.
But
yeah.
I wouldn't recommend you say no to mediation, but you can legitimately ask for it to be a bit later on if you've got reasons. And one of the reasons could be you're still in shock.
Yeah. So putting on the brakes.
Yeah.
If it's too soon.
Yeah.
And we've done many episodes on disclosure, and we talk about disclosure and prep for mediation in the
Yes.
course. But you need some time to do all the numbers and the figures if it's for property, and have a think about what it is that you actually want
Yes.
in mediation.
And get some advice maybe.
Yeah.
And so a very early, like just after separation is you've got a lot going on.
Yeah.
You probably don't know where you're sleeping the next week. Or
you'd be listening to the episode we just did and trying to figure out who's getting the car, who's going to take Johnny to swimming this week, and where are you going to sleep?
Yeah. What about that concert?
Yeah.
All of that. Who's paying the mortgage this month? So it's hard, and you need to be ready for it, because mediation is quite hard. It sounds like a soft thing, but it's actually a hard thing to do.
But yes, and the positive side of that is because when we did our first episode on mediation, I think it's we've done one, episode 58, I think, and episode 86 was about what happens after mediation. And episode 99 is mediating with a narcissist, if anybody wants to listen to those. But back in the beginning, when we were doing this 2 years ago, mediation was a little bit soft.
It was a little bit soft.
But the courts changed a little.
In September 2021, they brought in some new core principles, some new, shall we say, the central practice direction, and there is a massive focus now in the courts on mediation, and on mediation before anyone goes to court, so that they can't force you to go when you're not in the court system. You can't be ordered to. But if you get into the court system and you haven't been to mediation, then they will normally order you to mediation. And this very heavy focus up front is working, I think, in the court to make the lists and delays a lot slower, a lot less, for people, so they don't have to wait as long for trial.
Yeah.
But yes, so it's something you're going to face it, I think, one way or another. You're going to be given the option or requested to attend or ordered to attend mediation. So it's really important to prepare.
Or you're asking them to attend. So I guess it's a bit of both. And if you're interested in that process, we do talk about pre-action procedures and all of that kind of stuff. So you can look at, you could do our course that will be opening soon, or doing your prep work for that. But mediation really is, it's like your one chance before you have to go to court, like a trial.
I just think I'm laughing because you're always picking me up for using the terms from the court without explaining. And you just said pre-action procedures.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it sounds like, I don't know. It sounds like,
there you go.
Before I pick up that coffee, what do I have to do? I have to wash my hands. No, so pre-action procedures, I'll explain for Laura.
Thanks, Mum.
So a pre-action, the action is obviously someone filing in court. The pre action obviously is what you do before you would file in court or even instead of filing in court, because we hope that mediation means you don't have to go to court.
That's right.
And procedures are obviously just steps you've got to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have a whole episode on that if you'd like to listen.
Yes.
And we also talk you through it in the course.
We do.
Yes.
We do. Because this is a big change in the way things are going, and it seems to be working. But what it means is, Laura, you do a lot of the heavy lifting, so to speak, a lot of the detailed working out right at the beginning of your case, right after separation, instead of sort of someone just filing a document, putting a document into the court and saying, here, judge, can you sort our dispute out because we can't? The court's really saying, you haven't tried. It's like sending the kids back to do their room.
Yeah, yeah.
that room's not clean until I say it's clean.
Go back again.
Yeah.
So mediation, basically, when it comes down to it, you said it's that medium. So there's someone who's in the middle, being the ref, trying to help people figure out whether it's who gets what in property or
where the kids go, or who pays for school.
And so the prep work you kind of need to do for that, Mum, is gathering all your information and having it all on paper.
Yes. And there's a lot of work to do. We do talk you through, and I think we've got some templates in the course, but there's a lot you have to do. Stuff that you used to do at the end of your case, just before you had your final trial, the courts are getting us to do early on, and I think it's very useful, but it's pretty intense. But if you want your mediation to work, the best thing you can do is be properly prepared.
Yeah, we had one of our members who's finally finished and settled. She wrote in and she did all her paperwork, all the working out, had it all ready to go diligently, and was very upset and sad and stressed, but we helped her through it. And then she's finished.
She's free.
Her mediation is over and she's free. No court going on from that, just done. So, there are people that go to mediation and get settled and it's over.
And there was a lady, wasn't there, that a girl that wrote in and said her lawyer said she'd saved $5,000 by doing her preparation herself.
So, and I think sometimes if you are going to do some of the work yourself for mediation, you're more invested in it. You're more interested in it and you're more across it because you know what you're looking for. You know what to do.
And why. And why you're looking at that percentage.
As opposed to a lawyer who just looks at a lot of paperwork and goes, roughly this, roughly that.
But yes, and two, I think if a lawyer tells you, you'll probably get 55%, it doesn't really... There's no veracity to that. There's no investment by you.
You don't know why.
You don't know why, and why not 60%? But if you work it out yourself, and remembering it's always a range in our course. We always say this is legal education, but if you go through the checklist for property sort of thing, you'll come out at a rough idea, but it depends on which judge you might have got on the day.
That's right.
And you've also got to factor in your legal fees. So a lot of people settle at mediation to avoid the uncertainty, the delay, and the expense of going through to trial. So that doesn't mean you sell your soul and take a lot less than you should. But it is to some extent a commercial decision. If your ex-partner wants $30,000 more than you think it should be, then you will have had a letter if you've got a lawyer, or you have a rough idea of how much it's going to cost to go to court, and you think, again, that my ex is winning again, but still, if I give this $30,000, then it's done. It's over.
Yeah. So let's talk about, and look, there is an episode on what happens after mediation if you do come to an agreement, and we do talk you through in the course what to do with your agreement to make it official. But let's talk about the fact that I'm thinking about our person who's sitting on the couch. They're probably separated under one roof. They're stressed as heck. And the last thing they want to do is go to a mediation or an FDR or a conciliation conference or a inclusive children something. Do you have to sit in the room with them?
No.
Okay.
Almost never. Even people who aren't arguing, who are reasonably relaxed. Like in the old days, remember we used to do mediation. You did mediation at school.
I did.
And you would put the people around a table and then your mediator really was sitting in the middle of them, and it was a very hard thing. And then there were a lot of times where it wasn't suitable with violence or just anger between the exes. And sometimes the mediator would say, I'm not mediating that. Well, now it's more often than not firstly, it's often on Zoom or Teams.
Okay.
Secondly, there are always breakout rooms. So if you go to a venue for it, there'll be a room for you and a room for your ex, and they call it shuttle mediation, and the mediator moves between the rooms. Okay. So there's a real move away from being forced to sit in the room with your ex.
But you can if you're cool with it.
Yeah, I think.
But if you're not,
I'm a bit old-fashioned. But if you've got two people who genuinely want to settle things but just see the world differently,
yes,
and of course they do because they're separating. I've seen some magic happen when everyone sits around the table. They understand where you're coming from. You're not just trying to be, awful, and the mediation can resolve. But yeah, most of your mediators now will have the people in a separate room, or both of you by Teams or by Zoom. If you're really worried, particularly I think a lot of post-separation abuse can happen even though they're in another room, even though the message is coming from the mediator, because they may say something to the mediator who comes in and says it to you, not knowing that this is a trigger for you.
Yeah.
So you can ask if you can take a support person, and usually that's okay. You talk on the other side. If you're on Teams, you have to let the mediator know who's in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
And just prepare yourself.
So mediating with the narcissist, one episode, we've got some great tips in there on things you can say to the mediator in advance, or what you can do to prepare yourself. But I think it's important, if anyone's listening, to know that mediation isn't about sitting in a room and saying, he did that, she did that. It isn't like a therapy session, because I think maybe that's what initially people might think, kind of. It's like a negotiating therapy kind of thing. But when it comes down to it, it's facts.
It is.
It's
facts and future, and a little bit about the past.
Yeah.
I had one matter years and years ago where the lady had written out a couple of pages of stuff she wanted to say to her ex, who had not spoken a word to her since the day they left.
Oh, wow.
She had a lot
that would be
to
so
say.
hard.
And I said, I really don't think we're going to be able to do that. But the mediator said, she said to the mediator, I've got something to say. And the mediator said, okay. And it was awkward for us sitting there while she laid it all out to her husband. He didn't, poor thing was ambushed by it. He didn't know what to say.
Oh, wow.
But she felt so much better. Okay. And we were able to resolve things. So maybe you won't be able to say it to your ex, but maybe you can write it down and just be the betrayal, the anger, what you've been trying to build up.
And what we always say, and we give you a step-by-step process on how to prep for this mediation, what you can do for yourself as well. So you go in there knowing what to expect on the day. But I think definitely pair mediation with psychology session, or a hangout with your friends before and after. Yeah. Pre-plan some self-care activities so that you are okay, because you go, oh yeah, we've got mediation. Doesn't sound anywhere near as scary as court, but it is a lot more draining, because it's you having to think and negotiate. You do all the work. The lawyers don't do the lawyers still do work, but it's up to you. Whereas in a courtroom, it's up to the judge.
You're a passenger. Yes, because the lawyers will, if you do your own preparation, the lawyer doesn't have to do much. You can go, of course, without a lawyer. Yeah. But it is very draining. And here's the thing, even if you settle on the day, even if everything gets resolved on the day, you walk out, it's a weird feeling, because you've just spent months, usually, intensively sort of wondering what's going to happen to everything, preparing for it, and it's kind of been there all the time. And when you walk out, if you've settled it, it's gone, and this huge weight lifts off your shoulder. And some people kind of find that quite shocking for a while to get their head out, because, once you've resolved the property or the children or whatever the dispute is, then the relationship really is over. Because because
it's not over technically in some people's minds until it's signed, dotted, and you don't have to, can I have that third teapot? Yes. And can I come around and pick up this camper van or tarp? So when it comes to the mediation part, obviously this isn't the nitty-gritty episode. You can do the course if you want to learn how to get yourself set up for that. Yeah. But when it comes down to the end of mediation, just so people know what they're coming up to or what they might go through, can you have another one?
Generally, the court won't provide you with the second one like at court orders, but you can have several mediations if it's successful, if it's helpful.
So if you get like halfway, nearly agree to everything and that you think, oh, look, we could probably sort this out if we had an extra 6 hours or another 2 hours. Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah. So some people do that in a session. I've got a bit of an idea, though, that in my experience, a mediation will expand to fill the time it's got. And then the pressure of time will force people to nail down those last two things. Whereas if they think, okay, this isn't my last throw of the dice, I'll have another mediation in 2 months. There's two problems with that. One is it takes away the intensity of that first mediation. The second one is if you know you've got another mediation coming up, I think people stop trying to negotiate in the ordinary way. So you might solve most things at mediation and then you can fix the rest with letters, and you write to them and say, look, we agreed on this. Is the only things outstanding are these. How about we do this? So the only things outstanding are the Christmas holidays. What about we do week about each year, or what about we do 3 weeks at a time? So just put some options. If you know you've got another mediation, some people feel like they shouldn't keep talking until the next mediation. I said there were two problems. There's actually a third.
Oh, what's the third problem?
Cost.
Oh, true. Mediation can be very expensive.
So you're going to be paying for the mediator, even if you haven't got a lawyer. You're usually paying for the mediator if it's before court. If you go to one of the Relationships Australia or is there a family relationships centres, sometimes they will give you more than one session and they're not that expensive.
So I think Relationships Australia does it based on your wage.
They do. They charge you. Last time I looked, they charge you based on your wage, but they may offer for children a couple of sessions to help people come through. I think that's more helpful if people have just separated, but just in general, like the pure mediation model is there's a box. You devote yourself, the other person devotes himself, the mediator devotes himself for that time just to this problem. And you never get that. Yeah. Anyone who's got a lawyer will know, you ring your lawyer up and you are one of several matters that they're looking after. But when you're in a mediation, if you've ever tried to ring your lawyer and they can't talk to you because they're in a mediation, that's because everyone just focuses on your problem.
One client. So a mediation is your golden moment to have all the brains and all the energy and time, have your ex paying attention, you're paying attention, everyone's paying attention. That's when you can get it sorted. So that's important to know. Let's talk about the different personality divorce types and how they affect the mediation.
Right.
So if you've got an amicable ex, you guys split up, everything's okay. You all kind of do your own disclosure, which we haven't even touched on at all. No. But there are episodes you can go listen to on disclosure. I'll put them in the show notes. So you've all done your disclosure. You sit down. Is there anything an amicable separation needs to do differently, or you need to point out for mediation? If you're separated or about to be, and you need to get everything finalised and sorted, but you don't know what to do next, or you're looking for a way to do your own divorce and settlement without spending thousands of dollars on lawyers, then you already know what you need to do, and that is to sign up and become a member of the DIY Divorce Blueprint. Empower, educate and equip yourself with the legal know-how and the tools you need to get divorced or de facto separated and finally set. Work through this course at your own pace without feeling confused, lost, scared or overwhelmed of all the family law legal jargon and processes. Let us walk with you through this journey and show you a better way.
I think the only one I would say is that in my experience, the ones that I think are going to be easy because the parties aren't far apart often aren't like that at all. Right. Because if you're amicable on everything else and there's a sticking point, then I don't think you count a person as amicable if you go into mediation and that's the dispute you're having.
Right.
So there might be a line in the sand that someone's drawn and
that's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. So don't go in thinking this will be easy.
Yes.
And ask yourself with an amicable person, probably with anybody, Laura, if you're putting an offer to the other side, you don't want them to take it as an insult because of their point of view. So I always ask myself, how is this going to look to the other side? Is there a reason why my ex won't accept this, and what can I put in that would help him accept it or her accept it?
Yeah. And I think it's that mindset that needs to change, because I think when you're going into mediation, it's all about, I want this and I deserve that, and and look, totally get that feeling, because you're like, well, I was in this relationship, I deserved some compensation, and how dare they? But if you change your mindset for the day to, how can I convince them? How can I, what are they thinking? What needs need to be met to get them across the line to get the end goal that you want? But you got to change that attitude just for the day, which would be so hard. So go see a psychologist.
Well, yes, but you know what? It's probably how you got along in the marriage.
True.
How do I make this so that this person will accept it? Or what is it about this that's going to make them burr up? Because the worst thing you can do is put something in that you know is going to trigger, and all the hard work
it's undone.
Down. Yes. So.
Okay. All right. So that's amicable. What about avoidance? So like getting them to mediation might be the tricky part.
It's a bit of a miracle. Yeah.
So an avoidant person, in the process of mediation, if you write them a letter and say, let's do mediation, or you get the letter saying, let's do mediation, how many times does a mediator usually try to get them to come along?
Okay, so if it's a letter from them, you assume they are coming.
Yeah.
The mediators, often they'll ring one or two times, and then if it's not going to fly, it's not going to fly.
Okay.
Mediation has to be consensual at that early stage. Everyone has to agree.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like...
Not in the family court one.
No, not in the family court one, but before you go to court.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of dragging a 14-year-old girl to somewhere and saying, you've got to have fun. They're not going to.
They're not going to.
And he or she's not going to mediate if they've been dragged there, because they're not wanting the best out of it. And you're wasting your money, I think. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So
you just...
that might have to wait until the court orders it, or you make it painful for them. What I'm saying is, think what you've got that you can... This is general education only, but what is it that you can use to persuade them to come? We need to sort this out because...
Yeah.
So I've got my mediator. The mediator is going to ring you. We need to do this because, and think of something that's helpful for them. And just come along. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go to court, or otherwise.
Well, we point this out a lot. It's usually the ex that isn't doing anything and isn't even trying to lift a finger towards mediation or settling anything, usually is in a comfort.
They're too comfortable.
And it's usually the one that's wanting it is the person who either isn't in the house, doesn't have enough money, or all these needs, all the sorting out needs to happen so they can move on with their lives, and the other person is usually sorting out doesn't need to happen for them to move on.
Although there is that reluctance to do stuff, which is the true avoidant person. Sometimes they're motivated by fear.
Right.
They're really scared about what the outcome might be.
Yeah.
And they don't want to face it.
Well, look, and it is scary because when you think about it, if you're going to mediation, you're deciding on splitting up half of the assets or, more or less than half the assets. Yeah. So you are pretty much chopping off half of your assets you're cutting off your arm and your leg.
We call it, I prefer to think of it as you've got a cake and you're dividing it up and you're only going to end up with some of the cake.
Yeah, you're only going to get some of the cake.
You're never going to get all of the cake again.
And that's so hard because it's money, like emotional relationship aside.
Yeah.
But even with children, you're going to be not seeing your kids all the time.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to restart your financial life and restart your family life and sitting down and deciding on which part of the, leg you're going to cut off or arm you're going to cut off would be hard. I get that.
Yeah.
Like I really do get that. Yeah. Like I think that's super hard. And I think that's a mental bit that everyone has to go through and go, well, look, this is going to happen whether I kick and scream with my eyes shut and my ears covered and I won't get anything that I want in any way.
Or you may not.
or I'm better off at least being involved in deciding which arm or leg to cut off.
I prefer the cake. but yes, it's something that needs to be done business-like way.
Yeah.
I think you've really got to.
And such a big ask, Mum, to be business-like when it's your entire marriage and children and money, and it's just hard. I get why people are avoidant for it. Yep. I do understand.
And there used to be a philosophy that people shouldn't be sent to mediation until they were emotionally ready. And these new procedures don't take much account of that.
Yes.
Like our poor lady who was in mediation within 4 days.
That's
the mediator
crazy.
should not have done that, to be honest. They should have said this isn't appropriate.
Right. Okay, so that's avoidant.
Yeah.
So basically go and get some help and think you've got to get your head right. You really.
Yes.
And our module in the divorce course DIY blueprint is called Mediation Mindset.
And it is.
Because it's a mind. You've got to set your mind right and go, look, they're going to cut off my arm. I'll at least get to choose which arm.
Can we move on? I'm sick of arms and legs. I'm worried.
The next, don't anyone ever cut off arms and legs. We're not saying that. Okay, so the next one is manipulative and controlling. And look, if you've got one of those people, definitely go and listen to Can I Really Mediate with a Narcissist? Because a lot of people say you can't.
We reckon you can.
So Mum reckons you can. And she is a qualified mediator.
Yes.
And she does mediations still. She's trying to pull herself out of not doing mediations.
Yes.
But
so I'm attending more on behalf of people than running a mediation these days.
Yeah.
But yes, I think that you do have to have that right mindset. Manipulative, I still can't say it. We're doing this early in the morning.
Yes,
so
very early in the morning.
Manipulative and controlling people think they can use the arena of a mediation to dominate and get what they want. And any mediator worth their salt is going to stop that. They're going to work that out. But whatever their motive is, and if you've just escaped from a relationship with a person like that, you'll be like, hang on a minute, I can see what's going on here. This is what they used to do to me before. I'm not having any of that. But I always say, look, you've gone through this far. You've probably had children with this person. You've lived with this person. You've created a relationship with this person. Whatever it is you did to survive being in a relationship with that person, it won't hurt to keep going for a little bit longer just to get what you want. So you kind of turn the game on them, particularly if they think you're the same person that you used to be and you've had your counselling, you know what they're up to.
Yes.
But you can let them think that they're winning again, but just be aware. And this is where you're in our course, the things that we've done, we've talked about a couple of times, but for people who can't afford the course or don't do the course, it's a timeline we do up. You need to do up and you need to get all your assets and you need to work out, if it's kids, you need to have an idea of what days they go to. Well, of course, you know what day they go to footy and all of that. Have it written down. And I say take a calendar, don't I, to take, if it's about children, take your calculator and know what you're supposed to be, what you think you're entitled to. And then a manipulative and controlling person can do all they like, but you're on a particular path and whatever their motivation, and if they think they're having one over you, but you're fine, you've got the clarity of what you want, let them do it.
Let them do it.
Yes.
And don't be upset if you don't settle.
Yeah. Here's the thing about manipulative and controlling people is our listeners will only identify that person as manipulative and controlling when they're no longer under their spell.
Yeah.
So
you might not notice.
Well, you'll if you are no longer under their spell, you're awake to their rubbish.
Yeah.
And if you're still under their spell, you're probably thinking, I think it's going to be amicable. So yes, so there's a cognizance or an understanding that your ex has these traits that protects you from them because you're awake up to their nonsense.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you might not realise that yet if you think they're amicable. And they're not.
Yes. So
and there's lots of relationships that do have amicable divorces.
Yeah.
But there are a fair few, and we do an episode on that called Amicable in Sheep's Clothing or Wolf's Clothing.
Yes, I think we have amicable in wolf's clothing because there's that test to tell if it's really amicable.
Yes.
And that is just say no to something.
Yeah.
And see if they're still amicable.
Yeah.
And a lot of people know in their hearts that if they say no, that the other person's going to go ballistic. So it's not amicable. You're being bullied.
The reason that it's amicable is because you're doing everything they say.
Yes, so it's not a proper negotiation.
Yes. So you need to make sure that you're not falling for that in the mediation, because the mediation is really important for your future.
Yeah, ask your friends.
That's a good one.
Or a sort of a wise sister, what they think about the relationship. Because a lot of people, after separation, your mates come out and go, oh, I'm so glad. I thought that was terrible. I remember how this person used to talk to you and da-da. So, they probably have clearer eyes about it, because who wants to know that they've been living a lie?
Yeah, no, I know. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last one, Mum, is high conflict. What high conflict and mediation sounds like it's going to be a fireworks show. So you'd know, if you're listening, you'll know if you guys are high conflict, because you're fighting all the time, and you can't even agree on one simple little thing, which, I do feel like the court and mediators, they really rouse on couples a lot about being high conflict. But I want people to know that sometimes high conflict doesn't mean it doesn't take two to tango.
Yeah, sometimes. But if you're in a situation where someone's not being genuine.
Yeah.
But look, honestly, if you both just are coming from completely different aspects and don't see eye to eye and you separate, there's no harm in that.
That's the reason you separated.
That's right. And remember,
so you did the right thing.
Mediation used to be called ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution.
Right.
And then they changed the language to the Primary Dispute Resolution. But whatever way you cut it, there's dispute in the middle.
That's true.
If you've got conflict, there's degrees of conflict. It's a dispute. And you might be not too bad on some issues, and other issues you're dagger drawn. The mediator's prepared for that.
Right.
And that's what it's for.
So the mediator, and we've talked about in one of our other mediation episodes and in our course, the tactics that mediators use and their process on how to get an agreement and how to sort that out. And we try and talk you through that in the course. But there are ways around high conflict.
Yep. Well, when I used to do them in the same room, and you've got a whiteboard.
Did you wear a bulletproof vest?
No. But you think, what do we agree on? So I would write the day of the week. So it's Wednesday, this date, and that was fine. And we're here about children. Once people start to they formulate,
agreeing.
Yep. And all it needs is both of you to have an honest intention to try to sort things out.
Yeah.
And you have to have, if you've got someone in there who has no intention of settling things, then you'll notice it as a mediator, and also I guess as the lawyers will notice it, because you make what seems like a proper compromise and then they come back with something different. Oh, but what about that? I want the trampoline at my house. What about the dog? It's like, I always say it's like Don Bradman, that famous cricketer. He practiced with a cricket bat and a ball against an old galvanised iron tank because the ball would go off in every direction. And that's sometimes when you've got that effect where you can't predict what the next offer will be or what offer you should make, then there's a chance they're just loving the fight and they don't want to settle it. The nice thing about a private mediation is both parties pay.
Yes.
Right? And so there's an investment, a financial investment there, and that tends to focus people's minds.
So money sometimes can be a motivation for everybody to settle.
Well, they're genuine. If you're in the court and the court orders you off to mediation with someone from the court, like they have mediators up in Queensland anyway, up in the higher levels of the building and in every registry around Australia, then the extra incentive for a high conflict person to resolve is that the person from the court, whether it's a registrar or there might be a child expert as well, they report back to the judge about whether you made a genuine attempt.
Right.
And they're not as, I think they're a bit more directional. We used to call it facilitative. They tell you what they are thinking and they sort of tell you if you're being silly, and they'll tell the other person if they're being silly.
So it's a bit different to a mediation outside a court.
That's right, where the mediator is trying to just, it doesn't boss you.
So I think the aim of this episode was really to talk about, what mediation is, what you might be facing, being prepared for it. And really, when it comes down to it, Mum, everything we've talked about, even though there's the nitty-gritty prep work and everything like that, and there are other episodes you can listen to, and you can definitely do our course and do all the paperwork, do all the worksheets and get it all prepared. But it doesn't matter if you do all that work if you don't have your head in the right space and you're not ready to do it.
I think that you've got to walk in to mediation with as many of the unknowns sorted as you can. And in fact, probably all of your unknowns sorted so that you are very clear, probably like never before in your relationship. You can sit down and say, well, our cash assets are this many dollars and this many cents. Our house is worth this much today and here's the mortgage today. So you actually could sit down, and I don't reckon I could do that about my life at the moment.
Well, that's
say exactly what my dollar value is.
Yeah, and I think not many people can do that hardly ever unless they're one of those really budgety, clever, like financial heads with spreadsheets and stuff. That's, I think, one of the biggest hurdles is doing that hard work. Having it all there, your whole life with proof laid out on paper in front of you. Yes. And then have the right mindset to be able to settle and come up with a solution. But the payoff of that is you avoid court, you avoid the legal fees of prep for court, all the documents, all the affidavits, all the subpoenas, all of that doesn't happen. The delay.
And the continued fighting, which doesn't really help.
And then leaving it up to a judge.
Yes.
So if you're sitting on the couch right now and you're still at that point where you've just decided who's moving out and who's taking which car and who's taking Johnny to soccer on Monday, I don't want this episode to overwhelm you, but I want you to know that this is what you are going to be coming into.
Yep.
And it can be done.
Yep. And often someone will just say to you, are you prepared to go? This is a lawyer rings up. Are you prepared to go to mediation?
They go, what's mediation?
Yeah. So now you've got
now
that
you know.
information. It's in your back pocket and you go, oh, yeah, I know what that is.
Yes.
Absolutely. What a great idea.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And
if you can do it safely.
Yeah. And that's right. And I think every situation is different. You always have to go get legal advice from a lawyer.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is just us educating you on what the process is, what's going to happen, what could happen and what you might be facing. I'm going to put those episodes in the show notes.
Yep.
Yep.
And so one last, you normally ask me if I've got one last tip.
Yes, Mum. One last thing to our listeners today.
Thank you for asking.
To the poor darling hearts that are out there sad and stressed and freaking out. What have you got to say to them, Mum?
Yeah. There's a lot of waiting in mediation when they do a shuttle mediation because it seems like the mediator is with you for 5 minutes and seems to be half an hour with the other person. Mostly that's just perception. So a lot of waiting. So take some snacks, take some water, take a book to read. Candy Crush if you're desperately, if you're anxious.
A fidget thing.
Candy Crush is a biggie or something like that. But be prepared for those down times.
Yes.
And take something to ease your anxiety a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't
you don't
forget
mean
to have
pills,
breakfast.
you mean like a toy
Take a toy. Yes, I don't mean no, don't have a swig of anything.
No, that would be really bad.
Yes, but yes, the waiting can really affect people.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to be kind of on all the day. Most mediations will take a whole day.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be formulating other offers and adding up in between.
Right. So you can just chill.
Just take a little mental break.
Just take a chill.
Okay.
Because you would have done all that hard work to get all the information together.
So you're ready.
You're ready. Hopefully you've seen a psychologist, you've got your head around what you're going to be facing and what arm or leg you're going to cut off. Sorry, Mum. But that's what it feels like. And then moving on with, you know, just getting on with it and knowing that you won't have to leave it up to some random judge in a courtroom that you don't know and paying them lots of money.
Paying the lawyers
lots of money to get a decision you might not be happy with.
Yeah.
So, right. Mum, we have had some wonderful reviews.
Yes.
And excitingly so, we also have Spotify reviews that you can write now. So if you're listening on Spotify, there is a question. It usually says, what do you, either if I get a chance to change it, I put it to something else. But Mum, it says, what did you think about this episode?
Oh, yes.
And then I'm trying to put some polls up on Spotify as well. So you can actually vote in a poll about whatever the question is that we ask.
Oh, be kind.
Yeah. But what I'm going to be doing now is, instead of just looking at Apple reviews, we're also going to be looking at Spotify reviews, and we're going to be choosing one every month like we've been doing. And one lucky person gets to have chatsies with you. So what I would like now is to read, I'm reading one from Apple today, but from moving forwards, if you write us a review in Spotify, in the thing where it says, what did you think about this episode? Or maybe we've put a different question. If you can write a lovely review there, you'll go in for a chance to chat to Mum.
Yeah.
So today's review, this one is called Thank You, Thank You, Thank You. And it is by Moominik via Apple Podcasts. And she wrote this on the 30th or he wrote this on the 30th of the 6th. Oh, okay. So these ladies do this podcast for free, and it is so insightful. I've listened to every episode and feel so much more positive, empowered and supported. I recommend 100% and am deeply grateful, which was so lovely. Thank you. We do have some great other episodes, great other reviews. For example, so deeply grateful, I would be a complete basket case without this podcast, which is, I'm so sorry to hear that. But yes, so definitely if you are Moominik via Apple Podcast Review, you can send us an email at thedivorcecourspodcast@gmail.com, and we will sort out a chat with Mum.
Looking forward to talking to you.
So if you are interested, definitely go pop a review on Spotify or on Apple. And also we have got our webinars coming up very soon. So if you're listening to this episode and you have not registered for our webinar for Australia, definitely go and register. Go to www.divorcecourse.com.au and click on reserve our seat.
Okay. Yep. And I think too, by writing a review, doesn't it help our podcasts go up in the charts?
That's right.
And I think that because people don't talk about divorce in polite society, usually it's only amongst ourselves and other people going through it. You might be helping someone, to get to hear about it who desperately needs some support.
Yeah. Or if you know someone who's going through it, let them know about this podcast.
Flick it over to them because it seems to help, and that's what we're here to do.
That's what our aim is, to take away some of the darkness, shine a torch in there and go, you're going this way, guys.
Yes, and there's the end.
And don't be afraid, you've got this. So love to everybody who's been listening, and love to everybody who's written us a review. I do read them all out to Mum. We had one the other day that was sent to us in Instagram, and it made us both cry.
Oh, it did.
So I can't thank everybody enough for letting us know that what we're doing matters, because we're doing it because we want to make everybody have a really good, well, we want to make it better for everyone.
We do,
don't we?
Darling. Don't start crying.
No. All right.
We're going to have another coffee.
Hopefully we'll see you at our webinar. And if not, we will see you in the future.
Next podcast.
In the next podcast. Thanks, Mum. Thanks for your time.
Okay, bye, everyone.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.